Welcome to the Ghosts podcast, hosted by a ghost. This whole time you've
Ooh.
been talking, I've been like, I've been waiting to do this.
I was waiting. I knew something was going to come about it. I just wasn't sure what.
I uh I was testing it out a little bit earlier. I just like found the right angle. I just don't. Anyways, I have to. Okay, welcome to the Story of the Apprentice podcast, hosted by me, Jesse T. William. My co-host, is always,
Dunking my jimmies.
that's right.
When I realized I was going to have to say that out loud, I was like, I cannot believe this.
I think I could have done a little bit better.
It's
Tunking my
it's
jimmies is
more that it's such a it's like very clearly and then like a sexual innuendo for things I won't say.
I feel like after I like a couple of minutes after I wrote it, I looked at it and I was like, I should have been tunking in my jimmies because then it could be like a dance.
Yeah.
It could be like,
Now, but now there's not really a lot of room for
yeah. Now,
interpretation.
now, tunking my jimmies is just like, oh man, tunking my jimmies. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's, anyways. Um, this is a podcast where we tunk around a little bit. We tunk to the left, we tunk to the right, we tunk sometimes all night. And we talk about and we also talk
Yes.
about ghosts and we talk about TTRPGs. Specifically, this is the story of the apprentice. Tunk here in the Jimmies. Tunk in the Jimmy's boxers is the apprentice. He's becoming a professional GM, and you've been doing it. You've been doing it for a couple. Also, a real quick tangent. When I went down to get water, I took a sip of the water in the kitchen and deposited it directly into my lungs, and I
I
still
heard you.
feel.
I heard
I
you.
thought I figured I still feel the like cough, the like that like place in my throat of like there's still something there. So
Mhm.
one second. It's a podcast.
I know that Brandon's going to like close it, like zoom into your face as you like cough, open mouthed.
He can't because I'll disappear when uh, I turn this way. I'm pretty sure I just stopped existing. Um, Tucker,
Mhm.
do you got and I know last time we did this
Yeah,
3 or 4 weeks ago, um, you had things that
I
you want
have
to continue
I
on, I
have
think.
even new things.
Ooh,
I
okay.
was I
I have things too, but you go ahead.
okay. Well, because I was looking because I started posting some of the clips to TikTok and I was listening to us talk about a few things. And it was like interesting because it was before I had really started DMing. And now I've been doing it for a few months.
Hmm.
And there's just like things that I would be like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. This is how it generally has gone for me. We'll see how it goes. And now I kind of know how it went. So
Yeah.
that was really interesting to see that and be like, so now I'm like, oh, I should go back and rewatch those first few podcasts, kind of collect the little things to update on. But the one that I was watching was us talking about NPCs and the way that players attach themselves to NPCs,
Mhm.
engage with NPCs. And now I've had a lot more um like actual experience in that other than my home game. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. I have such different opinions on that.
Well, I have because that clip's been going around for me as well. I think part of my revelation is that I just don't create situations in which NPCs necessarily need to be engaged with. Like NPCs, I figured this out just right now in this moment. I really love just being a whole pale ghosty here. But I really should. Um,
There you go.
so I NPCs for me in campaigns, bang, 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 are um like emotional entities, not plot for the most part, not plot related or um like I don't know what other things, but they are like avenues for like emotional engagement with characters. That is why they're there. Is this one? Oh, I see. That is why they're there. Um, and so in an emotionally driven campaign, or rather, when that's the focus of the NPCs, there's not a reason for the players to talk to them. So as I'm like designing fucking four settings in ready for like the new campaigns in September, I'm like reworking just like I'm developing like whole new structures of like how I'm approaching something this big. But also having like the perspective and the um like I'm coming at it. I don't know how to express this. I'm coming at it with all the players mostly already on board. So I don't
Mm,
this time around need to worry about getting those other players. I can
mm.
just um build the world. Anyways, what were your thoughts? What were your revelations?
Um, so a little bit, and okay, there's a few things that this like ties to in the process. Because in the TikTok I was talking about like the way that like characters engage with NPCs. And generally I was talking about in my home games, like I know what calls to my friends. And so I can very easily create an NPC that they fucking hate or they really like, and that they'll engage with a lot. Um, whereas I wasn't sure how that was going to go in my games. And I've had very interesting, so two of the three games I have, I'm about to pop open a couple more. Finally, after attempting, uh, to all who are listening, now you know that I was trying to get some games open, and then my basement exploded into a lot of water and mold. It was great. But now that's sort of settling down and getting my life together. But in two of the games, um, I have one game with like one NPC and one game with like two NPCs. One of them wasn't supposed to make it. He was supposed to die. He didn't die, and now the party really loves him, so he's around. Um, will I maybe kill him one day? We'll find out because I am starting to get I'm starting to get, first of all, this is happening. The longer that I'm on start playing, definitely the more that people are finding my games. Now,
I
I repeatedly am running into the problem that yes, while a lot of people are finding my games, fucking read the DM description, which I'm sure we'll get into.
I need to start
Um,
fucking taking little post-it notes.
I
Because
part of it
do
is
I
because we
have
haven't
things
talked.
to say about that?
And part of the problem is that we haven't spoken in so long, so I think now we both are like, blah, 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 blah. But yes, that has been like the bane of my existence lately. To the point where I've just like started asking people, like, they'll be like, "Yeah, I want to join this game." I'm like, "Did you read the DM description?" Because there's either like they're coming into it for the wrong reasons, or I'm trans and they hate it, and they don't like that I am like no racists here. It bothers them. They hate it. Um, just read the fucking description. um, and I think it's like the white man effect, not to to call all the white men out, because there's something that happens, right? Where I think that like I was like, I would never have done, like I always like would read the description. I think it's because of my position in a marginalized group of people. There is like a fear there. I have to check. I have to make sure this is going to be a safe place for me. White guys don't have to worry about that. They're like, fuck it, everywhere's a space for, and then they don't even think about checking. That's not the point. That's not the point. We'll get into it. But we'll see what happens to little Aaron from the late night Saturday game. Because I am getting people who are interested in that game. And there's two NPCs in that game. I guess I could kill off the other NPC. He's a tad more plot relevant. We'll just see. We'll see what happens. Maybe new people will join right at the perfect time to get rid of good old Callum. But Aaron was not supposed to live, to the point where the characters were like, "What's your name?" to him, and I like in character, and I was like, "Give me 1 second," because I was not. He was like definitely supposed to die. He was just like fodder. Um, and here he is, and now the party loves him. They make memes about him. I don't know what I did to cause that, but he's there, and they're obsessed with him. I think it really like depends, like party to party, but so I have like some NPCs, and then my other Saturday game doesn't have any like NPCs within the party itself. And there's something to be said about the way that players interact with like NPCs that are within the party and NPCs outside of the party. um, and there's a difference to both a little bit. Um, where like I am getting a lot of engagement with my NPCs, to the point where like sometimes it's like, okay, engage with them a little less. Go engage with each other a little more. I get it. I'm so cool and sexy, and I make cool and sexy little guys. You need to go be over there. It's not a huge problem by any means, but uh, at no point was it like really purposeful either. Because the way that I tend to roll with NPCs, I've noticed is that like they'll serve a purpose, and it's usually to tie in some plot thing, to kind of give the characters like a direction to go. Um, and then I just kind of let things develop how they're going to develop from that point on. I don't really have like a clear direction from them after that. If the players are really engaged with it, good. But if they aren't, there's usually something I could do. Like the NPC fucks off, or like something happens, and it's not even necessarily about killing them off or them not even being in the party. Um, but if they engage with them, great. And then I have like a really good basis for what is engaging for that group of players. Uh, but I have noticed something, and this has to do more with engagement with NPCs outside of like party dynamics. Hold on, I am in need of apple juice.
Sip, 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 sip.
um, and it's partially the effect that my players respect my world too much. I don't know how I got a group, like a bunch of players that just have too much respect for they're like, they understand consequences almost a little too well, right? Where they're very like, well, this is what we've been told to do, so we're gonna do this very exactly. And we don't want to piss this person off because this is their position, which to some degree I'm like, good. Because a bunch of like murder hobos who like don't give a fuck about consequences would honestly kill me a little.
Mm-hmm.
However, sometimes I'm like, I don't know. Like, you could break the rules a little.
Be a little spicy, guys.
Yeah.
Don't
And
be
they
don't be a
do,
pussy. Come
they
on.
like will occasionally break laws. The Thursday party recently committed treason,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still very like, and maybe it's because I'm used to my home game players who are like, we will risk it all. These players are very careful about what they're going to risk. My home game players, and this is what I was used to up until this point, so I was a little bit shocked, are like, this could go terribly wrong and kill us all, and it would be awful. But like, we're gonna attempt. We're still gonna attempt it, and they'll plan for it. They will. They will attempt to minimize the damages, but they still will make some decisions that are like, holy shit. And they're not so worried about um, how do I explain this? Like their interactions with NPCs outside of the party are very like, they're very relaxed in the setting that they're playing in. Whereas like I feel like there's a bit of almost like antsy energy from like players in my other games of like, oh, are we gonna get completely fucked? Um, and I just think it's like really interesting the way that they like choose to like interact with NPCs, and also like not just NPCs but like power structures within the world and things that they've been told or asked to do by NPCs as like a plot hook or an encounter. You know what I mean? Um,
I'll point something out to you. Someone who's been thinking about this recently. So I had this moment in my Actios game, which by the way, I've I've 2 weeks left, 4 sessions across 2 campaigns before that campaign, which was the first campaign that I put on start playing, and the first session I wrote. Uh, um, Not really having an idea of like, should I write sessions before I have players? But also, it was the session I wrote for it, probably the best session I've ever written in my entire life. But anyways, sorry. I had this thing um where there's an event happening in like the third or fourth to last session. And basically there's like these future people, not future, there's people from a different place that might as well be the future,
Mm,
who had like a ship that crashed into a city, and the city's being attacked by devils. And there's a conversation, I think both parties ended up talking about it, like, do we go and save the ship? And people, or Aaron, like, go investigate the ship, because that seems like a very normal D&D thing to do. Like, oh, the ship goes down, let's go see. And they were like, absolutely not, let's not do that, that's a bad idea, we'll die. Because the consequences of that setting are very clear, or like the stakes of that setting are very clear.
mm,
And you learn it through playing the game and seeing how things work, and like the tone that's set up. And then also, I had a player point out, player who usually doesn't like point out these kinds of things, or even um tends to spread the stars around to other players more than the DM, but was like, oh, you because there's a very serious tone shift in Philia on the other side of things. Um and I didn't I let the players know at the beginning of the games, by the way, this is deadly. Like, this is, we've entered deadly territory. I'm no longer interested in trying to twist around the rules to keep your character alive in some version. If you
mm,
die, this is a place where you are staying dead. And I didn't even say it in as many words. But then a player does something and gets killed in front of all 5 parties. To be fair, they did the thing that I like used that moment in the other sessions. But regardless, like, they get killed all in front of all 5 parties to such a degree that I had to schedule an extra session, like a little one shot, for a bunch of people to sign up to, who missed it, to experience it, and then also like put this character to rest. Um, but the one of the players was like, this was a very good indication of tone. And I think that's something that we don't think about as DMs, is like how tone is implied through the
mm,
world. If you have like, I what I realize about a lot of D&D, or a lot of TTRPGs and storytelling through this medium, is that um a lot of the game, you can run a really good game without having like a good storytelling base, if you have a strong setup and you just follow through on the setup. And in longer, like, the longer it goes, the more you're going to struggle. But that's what I've realized, is that I've had a decent setup with a couple of the campaigns, and um kind of ran out of the momentum of that, and then had to like recheck back in of what I was doing. But anyways, all this to say, I imagine that the setup of the games, and like the tone context from whatever you're like presenting to them,
mm.
implies the rules and how they should engage with it. Um,
I could definitely see that in my Thursday game. um, just because there is like such in my Thursday setting, there's such a very clear power structure and social expectations in the culture. And I mean, I'm very proud of the players for they caught it, you know. They saw the ball coming, they caught it, and they were like, I understand how I should play this character based off the culture of this world. Which is something that's always appreciated when you put a lot of time and effort into
Mhm.
creating an entire homebrewed like setting, that the players catch on very
I,
quickly to like, this is how my character would experience this life and how they would respond to the world around
I
them.
I'll take this moment to give I've already said this on the podcast and given these props, but Thomas specifically, who's in both of our games, um uh is that player of like in the three games he's in my campaign, each character he plays, well actually, two of the three characters he plays, one like really doesn't have the same kind of grounding that the other two do, but he plays like two pretty difficult concepts, which are like second and third characters,
Mm-hmm.
that he executes really, really well because he's gone through in his own time. I think he's gone through in his own time and read through like the lore documents that I have and put the things together.
Mm-hmm.
To such a degree that I'm like, you like so I'm having a rant a bit. I'm gonna get through as quickly as possible because I feel like you're on a thing right now.
No, you just made me think of something else that I also had to write
Okay,
down,
good.
which is the
We're on a
topic of
roll.
lore available to characters. And my thoughts about that have also shifted
Mhm.
in the time. This is, I was like, oh, we'll probably just record for a little bit today. I have a feeling
Yeah.
it's not going
I have a game at 10 regardless, but after that game, if you're
to.
available,
I'll probably, yeah.
we should do a double because we've
Yeah,
it's
it's been
been
a
a while.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue,
Um
continue.
yeah, so in my world, uh um in the last like year, I've come to the realization, a revelation that I want every setting to have demigods. And the way I would imagine this or communicate this is imagine like the Norse, or specifically what inspired this, what like solidified the idea of what it meant to have a demigod in a setting. Because I was like developing the idea for a while. Like I knew it for a while before I knew what it was. But it was watching the playthrough of God of War Ragnarok and watching the dynamics between the characters that were
If
the
you spoil
gods.
that for me, I'll kill you.
So this had no, but just watching the dynamics of those characters and like they are people, they are people with relationships, but they embody something about the culture, right? And so to me, that's what demigods are in my world,
Yeah.
is
Which
that
is,
they embody something about uh uh the culture. And so when a player plays a character that embodies an element of the world very, very well or perfectly, and there is not a space filled in for a demigod, and with Leah there's none, that character is gonna become a demigod. um uh so like his character is on his way to demigodhood because it's he embodies the thing, um embodies the concept so well. Do you have things to say about that? Because you're also on something else, or are we on a new
I have
track?
so many things that it's impossible. There was almost like a trigger tangent because the problem with bringing up anything like God of War is
Mm,
that I don't think we've talked about this, but Norse mythology really inspires my pantheons and also the way that I build gods.
mm,
And what you said something that I was like, well, that's the whole my brain did the autistic thing, and I was like, yeah, that's the whole point of Norse mythology is that they're people.
mm.
They're people who embody a thing. That's the whole thing. That's the whole guy.
I didn't know that.
And
That
I've
God of War communicates that really well.
a God of War. I don't always for example MCU Norse mythology. I'm sorry, it's garbage. It's garbage.
It's
It's bad. It's
it's
not
not
good.
Norse mythology. It's
No,
weird
but
sci-fi
and so it like
fantasy.
it makes my brain like upset when I
Mm,
see it. And I was fine with the original like Thor movie and like,
mm,
but then eventually it just got a little bit too like okay, because I don't mind like people using those characters and like the God of War is like a really good example of like the use of Norse mythology and the I like one of my favorite Norse gods is Balder, and so the way that they did him in the first game really like it was so good. It was such a good interpretation of Balder as a god. It was a really, really good interpretation of him. which is not like completely accurate to what we know, but still, like there was still part of the text that I could see very clearly used, and not just not just the whole thing about like his weakness. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's in the book. Nobody cares, but I mean like as far as like his actual characterization goes, I could see like that these people had done their research, and while he's not usually depicted as, I mean, neither is Thor for that matter, and neither is Odin, but the way that they decided to like position these different gods was still like what wasn't wrong outright. You know what I mean? And it was a very like a thoughtful depiction of this mythology that also like did its own thing. And I was just like so like immediately impressed. I love Norse mythology. It gets in my little brain. And it does, I was talking about this with um both my fiance and Brick, you know,
Shout out to
recently
Brandon, our
about,
editor
yeah,
of the
but
TikTok clips.
I was talking to them about this recently about the way that Norse mythology inspires the way that I build gods. Um, and it's like a whole thing that I won't get into right now. But it was like a big, so you brought up God of War, my brain was like, ha ha ha. But then I had another thought about like but players and like the demigod thing. However, I'm gonna roll it back a little bit. We can finish out an original thought, and then I know like we've both now at this point made notes. Because then I also have thoughts about like lore accessible to players.
Mhm. Do you have that written down on your thing?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So I have two notes: players and demigods, and lore for players. But the thing is about like I think you're right. I do think they are picking up the tone. My Thursday players immediately picked up the tone very fast. Um, like just immediately played really, really, really well into like the culture and the society that I've created. Granted, it's like it's basically feudalism, so there is at least a little bit of a reference point when they know that coming into the game. There's been like a few things that I've had to be like, no, this is still fantasy feudalism. It don't work like that. It worked like this instead. But they've still caught on pretty quickly to the social and societal expectations within this world and the power structures that exist. Um, and that is like very impressive. But then also sometimes I'm like, I don't know, break the rules a little bit more. Now again, they did just recently commit
Mhm.
treason. However, they knew that there was a fair possibility that there were other people of power who would support their treason,
Mhm.
and therefore there's still something for them to kind of like fall back on. Um, Even if it they didn't know that they would immediately have access to it. That being said, I think that they're kind of coming to a point in the game where a lot of the rules of the societal expectations are going to kind of go out the window. And I think that's just something that happens when you introduce like when you are running a setting that takes place during a wartime.
Mm.
Is that a lot of rules just get like tossed. As far as like culturally who you can speak to and how you can speak to them, you know, and like what you're going to decide to do. However, in my other two games, I'm experiencing something really interesting happening, like two different sides of the same coin happening. Where like, okay, early Saturday game, I've realized that they got kind of like locked into like a specific route. And I don't like hand holding that much, but
Mhm.
it was kind of like an accident. It was still one of my earlier games. Whereas like my late night Saturday game, I started running later and I already kind of had like an idea of how to move things. They're both kind of locked into this story position and like locked into this like goal. However, one of these groups has a lot more freedom than the other. I realized. Um, my early Saturday game is like very like they've gotten stuck in this position and it's very much like really like almost like railroady. And I've been like thinking in my brain like I don't like I don't have fun when I'm doing that. I
Mhm.
don't like holding their hand throughout the process and leading them down this specific road. So I am doing something right now um, we'll see how these next few sessions go. That ideally is kind of putting them in a position to, here are several objectives that can like get done over a period of time. I'm putting them in your hands, and you as a party need to decide when you're going to do them and how you're going to do them. And also what you're going to do with the information you discover, because there's a few people who they could fuck over or not fuck over, or if whatever they want to
Would
do.
I give a thought, a little input? I'm having all kinds of thoughts here.
Yes, give me 1 second, you little
Okay.
creature. Whereas my late night Saturday game, they have like a main goal, right? They have a big plot goal.
Mhm.
And I have given them a variety of options. Um, whereas like how do I explain this? Early Saturday has like these options available to them. But it started to feel stagnant and I needed to do something about it to shift it. The later Saturday night game have been given a variety of options, but I something that I didn't mean to do is being done, where like without me even having to say anything, I've created like a tense situation, and some parties won't have fun with this concept. However, I do believe this is the party who, like, from what I've understood about the way they've been playing so far, enjoys the planning aspect of it, especially younger David. Um,
David, he's a great planner.
he
He's a
loves to
he
plan.
he phenomenal planner.
And he likes the collection of resources and the being able to logic things out. And so I've kind of put them in a position of like they have this main goal. Here are the way different. I have all these different ways there's so many different ways you can solve this thing. Okay. It's not as simple as like we fight one big guy. There's so many different ways you can go about this. But looking at this list of things they do, they have to choose very carefully. They only have so much time. I haven't even give them a specific time allotment, but without me having to say anything, they understand that time is imperative. They picked up on that, like, without, I didn't have to be like, yeah, you're on a time crunch. They immediately were like, this is a problem that needs to be solved. And if we take too long on this could potentially go really bad. And I don't even have to say anything. And so watching them decide where they want to go, why they want to go there, what they hope to achieve there, and also like have to kind of slot around a schedule of how they want it. Well, okay, and this place is on the way to there, so we might as well stop there if we're going to be in that area, because what if it doesn't work out here? And so kind of just like watching their little brains move, and they're also kind of locked into this into a more railroady plot. However, in giving them those options, they're really they're kind of like having fun with the time crunch of it all, if that makes sense. And having to like figure out how they're going to allocate resources and their time, and what they should do, what is more important to hit, and what they have to sacrifice doing in order to go to be able to achieve all the things they want to achieve. And I just kind of sat back and let them like talk it through. I said, these are the available options to you. Because they started rolling to see what they like could gather about like what they've known about the world and what makes sense to them. And I said, okay, well, here's what you know this and this about the world you're in. And then I just sat back and let them kind of talk through it. Whereas like with my early Saturday game, there is like a like give like here's what's happening in this world. Here's what you've got going on. And then there's like there was a lack of like autonomy for that party that I was like, I'm not happy with that. It's the autonomy, because even if I'm a storyteller and I'm telling stories, I'm not just running like an open world game, because it is, but it's not like some people run games and there's no point of it other than to run around and join this guild and here's an encounter here and there. It's very like whatever, and there's some plot things scattered around, and whether you pursue them, there's like big events that happen in these worlds, and there's a plot and there's a story that's happening, and I'm going to lead those players through that story. However, in that party, for some reason, because I don't have this problem in my late Saturday game, and I don't have this problem in my Thursday game. There was a lack of party autonomy. Um, and that was the thing. And I think that I figured out how to like shift it around. Um, because part of that was that somebody within the game in like who could be like akin to like Geigerad power levels gave them a task to go do, and they feel very beholden to doing that and not fucking this person over. Um, if any of those players from that game are listening right now, you need to skip like 5 minutes ahead because I'm going to talk about it for a second.
I
Just
will. Okay, we've done this before, in which we've been like, "Oh, we'll make a signal when it's okay to listen," and then we've forgotten to make the signal. You know, what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna keep
uh-huh.
my finger on my temple right here
Uh-huh.
until you're done, and
Okay.
then
When you
I'll
guys, yeah,
do
see
like a bad
Jesse
thing.
take the finger off their temple, then you can come back to listening. Starting now.
Mm.
So this individual of power has done that, right? Um, and is like giving them a thing to go do with somebody that they're not prepared to like, and giving them a task to go kind of deal with somebody they're not prepared to deal with yet. They've been told don't engage. You're just gonna kind of like discover things. Um, and I was expecting them, and this I think was a little bit of like this is how I've known players to be before. Did not like these players are fucking not the same. They're different. There's a different vibe happening here. Um, and so they didn't fuck off as much as I thought they would. They're taking it very seriously, and I'm like, that's good. But I allow like I'm to some degree always expecting players to do the thing that I am not thinking that they're going to do. I have to, as a DM, you kind of have to be prepared for that a little bit. um, So I'm going to separate them from that situation for a while and just have them kind of be given these things to go do. They can do them in whatever way they want. And they can plan for those encounters however they want to plan for those encounters, decide to do them at whatever point they'd like to do in whatever order they'd like to do. Um, and then I was like, I'm only going to bring them back to the main like situation, which everything that they're doing is still going to be plot relevant. But I'm the kind of DM where you can go anywhere and I'm gonna find a way to drop the plot on you. Um, there's plot everywhere you go, mostly. And so like I'm only going to bring them back to that situation with these two NPCs, right? Um Once they've kind of done this and they're in a better position to actually feel like they have some sway. You know what I mean? Feel like they're in a better position to potentially deal with it because right now they know that they're going to die if they like go against the grain. To some degree, that's okay. I still want them to consider consequences when they come back to this situation. However, I don't want it to be like, I know exactly what decisions they will and won't make right now because I know how seriously they have considered like that they would in fact fucking be obliterated at any given moment, if that makes sense. Um, I They don't feel confident enough to make decisions, if that makes sense, to a certain degree. Thomas is currently making a decision, um, but for the most part, they're like I can sense the fear, and yeah, a little bit of fear is good, but in the position they're in right now, there's just that lack of autonomy that I need them to have at least a little bit of, if that makes sense.
First of all, end of words. Am I good to
If what you're going to say is unrelated, then yes.
I
Or
it's
related but not going to directly.
yeah, I'm not asking for anything specific. I don't think. I'll ask the question and then I'll take my finger off.
Yeah,
If
based
it
on my
seems
response.
permissible.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if this is a leading question or not. When the figure gave them the task, was the task like achieve this specific thing, or was it like
the reason that I compare him to Geigerad is
Mhm.
because it was very similar to what Geigerad asked the Monkey
Mm.
Q.
Because Gygerad was like, if I recall, it was like
Help
vibe.
me with, yeah,
Yeah.
but
Um,
help me with this issue.
mhm.
Okay, for those who are unaware, just going to
So
give a brief
do you want me to
rundown.
run down the Gygerad situation, or are you running down your situation?
Both a little bit.
Okay.
I'm doing both a little
Okay.
bit.
Okay. Okay.
Whereas like the Geigerad situation is Abby had already been like, help me with this thing, right? And the Geigerad was like, yeah, I'd also go do that thing, except for I'm a little higher in power. Look at Abby, silly little lad. Yeah, I need assistance with this thing, with figuring out what the fuck is going on. Um, Similar request. I just need you to go like poke around about this issue. Come back to me with whatever the fuck you get, help me deal with it a little bit. Um, uh, However, um, here's how I'll explain it to you. It's like if the Bunkicule decided that we were going to like kind of it's almost as if like if the Bunkicule in that moment had decided to get like really stuck on the Blessed Ambassador
Mhm.
and like go deal with that. But then realized we can't, and then we're kind of like, well, we don't know what to do now. We had other things to go deal with at that time. The Blessed Ambassador was not our only issue, and eventually we could go try and deal with that situation. There's still consequences to dealing with the Blessed Ambassador, but we were in a better position to go do it. And that is kind of in the position I'm in, where I'm like, I'm gonna send you to go do some other things. I'm gonna give you a little bit more autonomy and give you guys a little bit more sway as a group. And when you're in a better position, you can go deal with this fucking not blessed ambassador, but effectively serving the role. Very different types of characters and enemies to deal with very different motivations, but for lack of,
Mhm.
to kind of bring it over. That's almost like what's going on. Um, it's as if the Bunky got kind of trapped on that. And we're kind of like leashed to it instead of having other things to go deal with, like the Rorin thing.
You know what I just realized?
Yeah.
Um, I've been struggling a little bit with the this is a tangent and we'll get back to the ear thing, but with figuring out or organizing the plot for the Falano aspect of the campaign.
Mm.
And making it engaging and putting the right elements in. And I've not once thought about putting a blessed ambassador because blessed ambassadors are like drivers of corruption. They're like leaders of corruption, and a lot of them, probably I would say over half of the ones that were in Flee, if not more, are dead. Either in the foreground or background, they're dead. And it's kind of moved beyond them. Like the goal, their purpose has mostly been achieved. But I just realized that it might not be too late. I could still do this, but putting a blessed ambassador in the mix with the current situations might be helpful. Um, is there outside of the powerful figure telling them to do a thing? Is there anything that's like putting pressure on the party in any sense to do anything? Like, do they have anything that's like working either against them, not like directly, but like against what they generally might be interested in
Yes.
that they're aware of also?
This party has the most information. Actually, I need everybody who plays in my games to stop fucking listening right now. Till Jesse takes his finger off. Get the fuck out of here.
Double
They are the
fingers.
they are the party with the most information about what is actually happening in the world. They are the party who was kind of given a direct tie to like, hey, guess what? There's like, and they don't even know half of it. There's like a a crazy ass like demigod that's chilling out, taking a fat fucking nap, and right now he's sealed away. But that's not going to last much longer, motherfucker. He's the size of cities and he will consume all of you. He will consume thousands of people for a little fucking snack. It's brunch time. They're the only ones with that information.
Mhm.
None of my other parties know about any of it. It's definitely relevant to them, but it's not relevant to what they're doing right now, and they don't know about it, and they wouldn't know about it until the very end of their stories. This party knows that the world is going to fucking fall apart soon. They are very aware, and it's stressing them the fuck out. Now, there's things that they can attempt to do to lessen. It's not like I've put this third level party in a situation of like, go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? A little bit, but there's things that they can do. And so like they know that there's other people who technically know about this problem. And the way that they're managing it, the party actively disagrees with the way that they're managing it and wants to they have like a drive. Several people in this party have a drive to figure out how to deal with this problem. Um, Regardless of like the other tasks they've been given, like wherever that ends up falling, sure, whatever. This is a problem that they still want to deal with. Several of them are like, no, this is a fucking issue. We can't just let that be. However, they're also very aware that in order to deal with it, they need more information. And there's ways for them to go get information. They have to go seek it out, you know? Um, and then at that point, they will be a little bit more well equipped. I was going to talk about this a little bit in terms of the players and demigods, right? Where um, what's pretty much going to happen, and this will be more relevant for my early Saturday game than any other game, is that eventually the kind of the arcs of this season, so to speak, are going to come to a close. The problem's not going to be over, you know? Rather, some characters will be unable or uninterested in moving forward in that way. Other characters will have very much a pull to the thing that's happening and can move forward. Now, if people want to continue to play in that next arc at higher levels, but don't see a reason for that specific character to be continuing in that situation, by all means, make a new guy, you know? However, some characters, I can kind of pick a few off the top of my head who would, like in that Saturday game, the majority of them are going to have a reason to feel like they need to see this through. And they're going to start playing in those higher levels. And eventually, probably start reaching certain people will start reaching something that's not really that's sitting somewhere where they are now and between demigod. Now it depends, just depends across characters and motivations, and I don't know how that's going to turn out. But like this party in specific is probably going to have like a lot of reason to want to continue on and continue dealing with this larger problem. Whereas some other characters will have dealt with the thing that is like immediate to them and will not have a reason to or not be able to continue kind of like moving forward with this thing. Other people are dealing with it, you know what I mean? Go home. um, there are a few things I know about the situation that I won't go into right now because then we're getting onto another like much larger like tangent about the plot of this world and like what's going to happen with fucking Tian, who is this big scary thing. Um, but and the other things that are out there that this party knows a little bit about and will gain more information about. But so that's the thing that kind of is pressing them, is like kind of tying them into the situation that's not about the task they are doing necessarily. They could this task that they've been sent to do, they could do that, finish that out, and be like, all right, peace. But because they know this larger thing is happening, they most of them have a motivation of some sort, well, different from each other's motivations to feel like this is important for them, and that they have to go do the thing.
Um, I have I have a diagnosis.
The
I have a
diagnosis.
conclusion. Um,
So fucking hot in my room.
it's also hot here. It's just because I'm in it and I'm always shining through your screen and making you hot. I'm going to take my fingers off.
Mhm.
I might put them back on and I'll give this voice a message. For everyone coming back, these fingers might go back on. Tucker will give me a signal. But
We'll try not to have them back on too much more often after this.
yeah, I have a thought.
Give me your
Um,
thought.
and I think this comes to a structure thing. Because you talking there gave me a revelation about something, and this will actually tie back into something that I've been dealing with recently that isn't necessarily D&D related, but I on this podcast I talk about a critical role every once in a while. I talk my shit, and when I say talk my shit, that's me being hyperbolic. I tend to, I don't know. But I'm gonna start in a place that seems unrelated, but it'll all come together. I made a TikTok recently because I had an observation about the way Matt Mercer runs games and encounters specifically that are kind of in bad faith, where he wants to extend his encounters and will make rulings that are against his players that are inconsistent. He'll always find a way, or not always, but when he wants to have an encounter a certain way, he'll find a way to not through the rules or through the encounter itself being
Mm.
difficult, make hard on the players, but make rulings that are hard on the players, which is bad. That's bad DMing. That's bad DMing. Matt's a phenomenal DM. Matt's I in making this TikTok, I ended up going back and looking at an episode that bothered me from a long time ago. And the episode was really fun to watch. The way Matt runs the combat, really exciting. It's meaningful in other ways, but specific elements of the encounter, to me, it's not just like, oh, he made a ruling I didn't like. It's like, oh, it's about being inconsistent. So, anyways, I made a TikTok about this. Not about that and with that much specificity because I didn't have that much specificity at the time. But I made a TikTok. I was like, I'm gonna talk my shit about Matt Mercer, la di da da da, and I gave a very very measured criticism, very
Yeah.
measured. I was like, listen, I like the show. It doesn't need to be anything else than what it is, but here's some things that I think it could do better, and a bit is about Matt. You would think I shot Matt Mercer in the dick. The way fucking Critical Role fans blow the fuck up about
You
and
killed him.
I killed Matt Mercer.
I
I
have to
ki-
go look at your TikTok now.
It was so measured. The people in the comments are insane, and I haven't engaged with a single one of them. The people are so pressed, and the thing is, um, so that's why I bring this up because I'm gonna make another observation about Critical Role, which I think relates to a little bit what you've told me. Um, which
If you compare
is
me to Matt Mercer too much, I'll probably kill myself on the podcast.
um it's a structure thing I noticed about the campaign. So I'll talk a little bit about my campaigns and why they're so amazing. Now, something I did unintentionally with Folia, but I think something that I've like accidentally done well is through structure. So I talk a lot about the like top to bottom structure of like you have this thing that spreads out into these other things. And as players progress through the story, they come to revelation about, oh, this keeps going up, this keeps going up, this keeps going up. And it's a fairly natural progression, right? Um, so in the first campaign that came into Folia, you have, oh, there's this little cult and they're causing problems. And it's like, oh, so they deal with it in the first city and they go, oh, this cult is in other places. Oh, this cult is affecting some like pretty important religious people. Oh, this cult is affecting the the justice pope. This is a province-wide thing. Oh, this is a countrywide thing. Oh, this is a multinational thing, but we're only worried about this part that's dealing with our country. And then, oh, this is a cosmic thing when we learn about the divine emissaries and the purpose. And um uh and then the Oracle of Cracked Eyes is introduced. Um, but all of it was like very, very slow build up. It was like one to one to one. And for the most part, people could deal with it, whatever they were given, or it wasn't too far out of hand for them to be able to deal with. And I think that is a very successful kind of like structure. And one of the things that's been frustrating about watching Critical Role is that the characters are like maybe level 10 or something, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. And the big problem that they're dealing with, that they've been dealing with for a while, is that the moon contains a god and it's being released and it's going to kill all the other gods. They're level 10. How are the players meaningfully going to, it's out of their hands, right? And so you have this conflicting, this like conflicting tension within the story of like, we want to deal with this thing but we can't. And so I feel like you've told me a similar thing where you've revealed the big thing and the players are
It's
like,
the only difference being is fucking put your fingers up again. Go away, everybody else. And the problem is that it's not the big thing.
hmm. But it is a like big
It's a
feeling
it's a
thing.
it's a
Yeah.
big they've for example, I will put the problem that it's a big feeling thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I put the problem that they're dealing with on the same scale that the other parties are technically dealing with the problem. The only difference is that this party has a better understanding the scale that they're dealing with. They're the only ones that have put together how bad it is, or like how bad it feels to them in comparison to where they are right now. All the other players are like, yeah, it's not good, but like, yeah, you know. Um, Rather, this party knows like the level that like to what they're dealing with. You know what I mean? And the other parties, like, it's the same scale. They're just like not aware of that yet. And now it could be like I could have attempted to shroud that a little bit more for this party. I definitely could have attempted that. Like kind of hidden it away a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more, rather than kind of like when that information came, letting them sort of discover how bad it was. There are some character decisions that were made that led to a situation like that unfolding. Um, because this party, this a specific person in the party was the one who was like, "I'll make the spicy decision," and everybody else was like, "We have fear of the consequences," but this character was like, "I have no fear. Fuck you." Um, and ended up kind of unraveling some things because he was getting a little fucking cocky. uh, and not just cocky, but he was being a little problematic. Um, however, I agree that like it's created the like
Mm-hmm.
big problem feeling.
Yeah.
It's something they are um like I it's almost like I feel like now I because they have that information, I need to
The
let me
things
consider
that
my
they,
words so I can consider if you need to take your fingers off.
oh, well, I think might have the words for you here. They need to feel like their response to that problem is equal to the like seriousness. Is that kind of in the realm or?
Kind of, yes. I need to somehow figure out how to give them the hint without outright giving them the hint that this problem can be dealt with in stages.
Mm,
and they are not going to die immediately.
mhm,
Like they're okay. You're okay. You accidentally kind of like stumbled upon the scale of the issue.
mhm.
Trust me, I know you'll get there. You will eventually get to a point in which this is a little bit more feasible for you. I promise. An event like you have a few things to do beforehand that will get you to the point that you want to be at. You're not, it's not hopeless. We're
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
Everything okay.
here's the thing.
Now it
And
should still feel a little upsetting,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm
I
not gonna just be like,
mhm. I think I think I can take my fingers off.
I think so
Because
too.
I can lead
I
this
just
back.
I got excited like
Mm,
I was like and I didn't know where me explaining that how much I was going to need to
mm,
explain that. And I was like, if I accidentally pop off on some shit that doesn't need to be heard.
yeah. I I'm going to I'll talk about the first arc of my campaign again of Philia, because this also leads me into some other things that I want to talk about. Because you mentioned earlier how the tone of the campaign is changing in like a wartime and how certain things are being tossed out the window. Um and so um when the players encounter a problem, the scale at which the problem exists never truly changes. It's only the player's awareness of it. And so it's
Yes.
kind of like a thread. It's like of like a sweater that you're like pulling, right? Of like, oh, this is unraveling. Um, and every time it's like, oh, I finished a sleeve, and now there's this whole, whole other thing to it. I think what I'm realizing, and this isn't something that I was aware of or even knew to do intentionally, but was doing accidentally. I think a lot of people think good things that people do are accidental, but is to like, well, I guess I kind of did. Is to keep awareness low, like keep mystery, because mystery drives people. When there are things that's like, oh, this doesn't add up, people go for it. But when like framing, I think matters, and having a frame that even though the situation doesn't feel helpless or isn't technically helpless but feels helpless, um if players feel helpless, they don't know what to do. So for example, when I started my third campaign in Folia, at the Nithium Truce Mark, boop, I love having my map behind me. The players enter a situation in which two sides of this city, divided up along the border between the orcs and elves, um, were having tensions rise because of the corruption, and no one knew it was because of the corruption. They just knew that there was this like presence and things, but they saw, the players in the first session saw that this was turning to a battle. And the truth, like it's the exact same thing or like vague structure that I was preparing to use in uh that I used in the first campaign, in a different dressing. But I think there is a bit more importance to this one. So when the players realize that, they're like, we can't do anything about this. This is too big. We're just three guys. And um, so they left. Um, so I think like keeping players aware of like, I don't know how to like imagine you are really, really tired, but you have to run a marathon. And but you do, also, this is a weird analogy. You don't know where you are in the marathon, or maybe you know what, you've been running a marathon. You've been running a marathon. There we go. You've been running a marathon, and you need to keep going, but you don't know how much is left. Um, if you know that you have 5 miles left, you're gonna be like, "Fuck, I can't do 5 miles.
Hmm.
But you can do 1 mile. And once you get to that next mile, you can do another mile and so on and so forth. So I think it's just a framing issue that like if things are too big, players' brains will break. And it's just about threading that along.
Yeah.
So I don't think there might not be a remedy for that, other than like maybe here's some allies who have some solutions. But
What I'm doing and what I've decided to do, because I've already made a decision on what I decided to do and I've already started playing it out.
mhm,
They know that there are several things about the situation they don't understand yet. They're aware of that. Um, they know how to potentially gather more information. I'm going to let them go like that, work it in stages, the amount of information they get about the nature of the thing that they are dealing with. As they go through that, they're going to get better at doing things. 'Tis the nature of leveling up, and they're going to feel like they have a better hold on the situation, hopefully, as they become more knowledgeable about the situation. That's the goal.
mhm.
Um, Stop that.
Stop
My
that.
dog is slurping on the bed. Look at his little foot. I don't like it. So as they kind of move through the situation, um, and like they will discover more things. They will have uh a better grasp on what is going on. They will have a really good idea of like the events that occurred led to this and how that could potentially aid them. They will be getting better at things. They will be getting have a better foot in the door. And instead of just their little pinky toe that anybody could like shut it really hard and then their
Mhm,
pinky toe would break and like snap. And now they're gonna have like a whole they're gonna have like their leg in. It would still hurt if somebody slammed the door, but like you know, you're in a much better position to actually get through it still.
mhm,
You can still push a little. You can still make that fight and reasonably be potential like be able to like open that door to be able to push it open against the thing that is pushing back at you. Instead of just, breaking your fucking pinky toe and being stuck in the room, they'll have a better spot to move forward from.
mhm,
And again, this was like mostly accidental on like my part, where I didn't really mean to give them that kind of information. Um, and it was supposed to be much less. And then Elijah did something. Um, and I was kind of caught off guard, I think too. And I was like, well, I'm going to attempt to solve this. Um, but again, that's kind of like the fix that I have in mind, or at least the thing that will kind of alleviate. And I think that if I do it correctly, it should work fine. It should be fine. I've already dropped to them that like, hey, there's information that's definitely out there for you to get. Here's a little help. Here's a point in the right direction. Your characters want to deal with this. They know they need that information. They know they need to gather more. Go gather more, and you'll feel like a lot more equipped moving forward. You'll
mhm.
have more autonomy. You will not be kind of immediately like, oh shit, oh fuck. Whereas, like, again, with my two other parties, I put them, I've been doing the thing that fucking God that you've already said. Like, it's the sweater. um, and then things just kind of went off the rails with that early Saturday game, and I was like, well, fuck.
The thing, in a similar sense, I with I don't think this is 100% on me, only because with Thalia, the thing I'm about to say, I had no control over how the campaign or campaigns started. Like the first and last campaigns, they're like 6 months between starting, but they all started at the same level, which is 3. and then had to like work their way up. Um, but something I realized uh, as on like retrospect, and something that I'm dealing with the consequences of now with like certain arcs, is that uh, fundamentally, with the campaign being run in this hex down here, um, the rest of the setting needed to be keeping pace with what they were driving. And when they're 30 sessions ahead of like every other party, um a bunch of parties get kind of lost in the mix. um so what do I mean by this? uh it helped, and it hindered a couple of things. I'm going to try to break this down in a way that makes sense. So for example, I did a big long rant a day or two ago that Brandon's going to edit for me. Thank you, Brandon. And I'm going to pay him. Fucking let me pay you, Brandon. Um, uh, in which I talked about how all of the lessons that this first campaign picked up and all the mistakes they made became like lessons for the rest of the campaigns. But also, like, again, because the plot was progressing and the plans of the bad guys were progressing, it meant that things were were were, were not given appropriate space. Like it was how do I explain this? Players could not sit in the moments as much as the first campaign, because ultimately, like, I needed to get to the meeting of the monarch. I had this big event that was had been set up since like session 15 to 20 of a now like 240 or 230 some session game, that at some point needed to happen. Like at some point it could not be stopped. Like, and it took a while, but at some point it had to happen. And so I had to get every single party to that point. And I think that was to the detriment of a lot of stories. Um uh I think it worked out for some by virtue of like interesting player choices. Like I think the reason that the Bunky Kuel had a good campaign up to the meeting of the Monarch was mostly because you made interesting choices and interesting connections, and not
Mhm.
necessarily um on my on my I see a little dog paw in the distance. Um on my construction, but on my reaction to those choices, which is a big part of D&D. But then at a certain point, it was like, this, I need to make this bigger to accommodate the story and this and the logic of the story. And that has left parties behind. But I think it's like, to relate this back to your problem, um, when you make a mistake, the fucked up thing about TTRPGs is that you can't really take it back. Like
Yeah.
you can't
There's no
um
rough draft. I can't
yeah.
go back and rewrite it and then nobody had to have seen it until, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just out there now.
So
Fuck.
I feel like the last kind of arc before the end is like did not get the appropriate amount of time for people who did not go to the human province, which is like you and everyone else, because the other parties didn't spend that much time to set up events, like personal and individual events and stories in those worlds. Like those were already happening because
Mhm.
things had to be happening. Um, but where is it going with this? I had it and I lost it. Oh, so things that ended up feeling rushed for me. I feel like my it's too late now. I'm trying to salvage what I can, but I feel like it's the whole or a lot of things were unfortunately rushed. That I wish I could change, but again, I think a lot of that comes from like the virtue or by virtue of just not knowing when games are going to start and having 8 games in a setting spread out across 6 months. But what I do think was interesting, this is just a random rant, um, is how the feeling of things getting out of hand in Falia became a part of the story. Because like every single party at some point has had the conversation of like, this is too much. Like we are fucked. This is too much. We can't handle this. I'm just a little guy. And then
Oh
like
God.
every person came to the resolve of like, we're all just little guys, but collectively we're a bunch of little guys who can do a big thing.
I feel like I don't know who I was talking this about. It wasn't something I talked about in game, but I was talking about like the principle of like Surveil's little guy feeling. I think I might have been talking to this about to like Brick or something. After Narcisse died, me and Brick were talking about
Hmm.
this.
The second time?
Yeah, the second time. You know, when Surveil like popped off.
Yeah.
Because he did. Um and I was talking about like Surveil's thing about the situation because he has like I'm just a little guy feeling.
This little guy.
But he also I think has the feeling, right, where it's like if every person who was like I'm just a little guy left, then there would just be like no one to deal with the problem.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
kind of the thing. And so it is, while his presence alone doesn't do anything, it's more about like the principle of like if every little guy just goes, then all the little guys are gone and nobody's dealing with it.
Get out and vote, folks. Collective action, little guys
Yeah.
working together. I think that's just a fundamental thing. The reason I'm attracted towards telling like this many stories and this many or stories on this scale with this many campaigns and this many divisions is the little guy effect.
Yeah.
Is the a bunch of people
That
who
yeah. I was gonna call you out for something, but
oh, the little guy effect.
I was
Uh,
gonna call you out for like because you were like, oh, sometimes it feels rushed in certain areas for certain
mm,
campaigns. I was like, I'm also gonna call you out in the sense that Mr. fucking and I'm glad you have more planned breaks coming up, but I know that it creates the effect of Jesse can't take time off or like cancel a session.
yeah.
And that's why I'm glad there's some more planned breaks for you. And it seems also that there are some smaller groups of campaigns taking place and a little
Um,
bit more split
so
potentially.
what's gonna happen? The way so I'll try to breaks, folks, take breaks. Um,
Please.
yeah, I mean like that is a fair like law is that when you are a professional GM and you have this player base to set up, like I took a break in December and I lost 9 players. 9 people left. That's a lot of money over a month. Now to be fair, sometimes life just builds up and new years change and whatever, but it's very difficult to manage um players. And so I for the longest time didn't really feel comfortable in taking a break. Um but yeah, to the degradation of like my mental health, my physical health, and by extension, the quality of the game. I have one campaign, the Wednesday morning campaign, which I feel like I have failed them on a story level because I was too stuck in too many things. I had a good setup for the first arc, and then I didn't really have time to plan out a second arc. I just needed to keep putting sessions in front of these players, and I didn't know. I knew generally where I was going with it, which I was like, okay, I'm going to connect them with the other parties, and they're going to go to the meeting of Monarch. But I didn't give them good reasons to go anywhere. And I looking back on it, like even during this conversation, I had a set up the whole time. Um, uh, but it's just like the story got too big and they became um like unimportant to it. which was a mistake. But Whoops. And I feel like a little bit with the Bunky Cule as well, in which you had your Venudri thing, you became attached to Venudri, and you're committed to the bit of like, oh, we are here for Philia, but there's not a whole lot in Falano outside of Lorna's thing for the. It's not like there's a villain
I
that you're
yeah.
chasing.
I think that with that, there's a really big thing with the Bunky Fuel about that's important to them, but because it's important to Lorna.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that kind of in if this situation, maybe one other or two others will push the character, like the fact that the Monkey Fuel has very strong relationships to each other.
Mhm.
Um, Definitely a party. I've seen many parties in which they do not give a fuck about each other like that. The
Mhm.
Bunky Fuel like really gives a shit. So the dog Snoot now. Oh, it left. But where like if something's important to one of them, it's going to have it hold at least some weight for the other members of the party. And
Yeah.
that really pushes them through what they might have gone there regardless for the sake of Thalia, but what really pushes them there is Lorna's connections.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
Only for Lorna to fuck off.
yeah. Jeez, that's been a huge fucking problem, which is nobody's fault. But when you're running games on a schedule, if a player who needs to be at a session in order for a thing to happen is not there, things will fall apart. The momentum, a lot of things will fall apart, and that's another thing I've experienced a little bit in this last arc. Is we've had a couple of like notable absences where we really couldn't afford one,
Yeah.
and I've had to like I we had this big event with at RFO at like the big culmination of events at the Human Province, um and I had to cancel the last session because only one of the actual players who's paying me to run that session was available. Um, and it was like it wasn't the end of the world, but like it would have helped to show what happened in the end. Like because that session, the events of that session still happened just without any of the players seeing it. And that's like fucked up. Like that's like the thing that's like really difficult about a campaign this size is that especially when players get together, things will happen without players being there. I cannot schedule it any other way. I would need like I've had things where if I canceled sessions and I rescheduled them during my time off because it was so important to keep everyone on track. Um all that to say, in the new games, so 4 settings, the stories are going to be extremely more personal. The emphasis of NPCs and character dynamics, and like the politics of these different settings on a micro and macro scale are much more the focus, and um that sense of I don't know where I was going with that, but um that will allow me to a I'm dividing groups up, so even when there are crossovers, not as hard to manage up until another like year and a half down the line. Um, but also, it's allowing me to schedule breaks in. It's allowing me to um, take 6 to 8 weeks on and then 1 to 2 weeks off, uh, uh, just so I can like take that time, physically, mentally recover, get excited about the game again,
Mm.
plan out what's going to happen next, and put more thought into it, because that's another thing, is that like I with the Falano side of the situation right now, I am like each session, I'm like, actually, I think this should happen. And I'm not having that with Arvo. I'm not having that with the human side of things, because I'm like, this was like well planned out. And this had a lot of background to build up to this. And this other side will, in like, none of the almost like none of the things that are happening in the human province are new to anyone, and everything that's happening in Falano is new to almost everyone. And that's a huge disconnect in the storytelling, which is difficult to manage. And again, I think it just comes from everything having been um again, like, disparate. Like, if all the parties started at the same time and could slowly build up to where they got to, instead of being thrown into situations, and if all the parties were level 11, I think
Mhm.
we'd have a much more compelling story. But I think that people are going to have a good time with like the next 2 sessions for the Wednesday night group, 3 sessions, but for the rest, there's 2 sessions left in the major arcs, and then beyond that, it is going to be, and then after that, I think I'm going to do pretty well, because I have a different plan. I'm so excited about this, Tucker.
Mhm.
So the big struggle. My legs are so wide and you can't see it. The big struggle of storytelling in TTRPGs is the adventuring party unit, and how players are tied and characters are tied to players and time slots. What if that were not the case? What if you could tell a story? What if you could
Uh-huh.
tell a story that characters showed up when they belonged in the story and weren't there because they had a specific time slot? So hear me out. The last arc of the Flia campaign, one shots, all one shots, a bunch of things that are left hanging in the campaign, or the last things to do, one shots or 2 shots. Yeah, here are the things. And the players go, well, my character should be there. So they're going to be there. Right. And so the reason I'm doing this is because it genuinely does not make sense for a lot of the party units to stay together in the way that they're staying together. It makes sense for them to be around each other, but certain things, it's just like too hard to manage to keep them together. The Bunky Q might be one of the few exceptions, maybe,
They're
of
all married.
uh, sticking together for those last arcs and maybe not even having the one shots. I think the thing that I'm going to set with them is tying back around to something that's been present throughout the campaign, and something I've seeded a little bit in the last couple of sessions. But yeah, so I think that's going to be a very effective end. I think we have 2 more sessions of stumbling a little bit, which I can't help. I just can't. I'm doing my best to make it engaging and giving meaningful things, and I'm trying to think ahead of like arcs of people who are going to Svednam. But it's just like this was a bad setup on my part. And again, it's not even all on
Um,
me, even though like
Shit,
I
it's
was
like
I
you
was stuck.
said, and the same problem that I had is that once you make a mistake in a TTRPG, you
Yeah,
cannot take that shit back.
yeah,
And we are but people who will make mistakes. It fucking happens. And again, if like my impression of it is like, and I don't know how this transfers to other parties in your games, but I know at least from Bunky Fuel experience having certain people missing from the games, especially often, not ideal for like the timing and
Yeah.
when things are supposed to happen and not being able to have certain people there for certain things. Like certain character arcs kind of relying on each other and not really
Yeah.
being able to get addressed.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it just made and so like I that happening across a lot of campaigns can definitely it's definitely going to cause some stuff. I have a player who like basically told me he's going to have to miss every other week, and I had to have a whole conversation where I was like, you would understand that that means
Yeah.
like I'm not always going to get to your character stuff
Yeah.
because sometimes it's just not going to fit in because like I cannot plan around you being there and not being there, you know? And so that's it's just a hard thing to kind of like move through. Regardless of how well you have your game set up.
Yeah.
Part of D&D is that unexpected shit is going to happen, and that is made twice as hard when unexpected shit happens and certain people who are integral to plot just aren't there.
Yeah.
Or not even just integral, but to the bigger plot, but integral to the character dynamics within the
Yeah.
party.
Because also that's another thing is that each campaign, each party has a different avenue of driving story. Sometimes some parties are all about plot and have their character moments, but mostly about plot. And so, like, the first party is one of the easiest parties to run for because you can have, there's only 3 players left in it. You can have 2 of those players and more than a couple of times, no matter the two who showed up, like the combination, you had a situation in which they can go through an entire session and like like make things happen in the session, which I can't say about every, um because their experience is they're not as much going on arcs or as small of arcs, where it happens as immediate. It's like very long, very large because they're high level. They've been through all the small stuff, and
Mm,
so um, when they get a chance to just experience kind of a more personal thing, great. Um, but also like again, they have the most connections and know the most, or like have the most NPCs to talk to. Um, but yeah, it's just that's a whole other thing. I was gonna say, oh, Bunky Q stuff. I don't know. Oh, what's really fucked up in a crossover on the Bunky Q and the Alpi's Light crossover. I talked to Trexie about this. There's no like bad feelings or anything, but I was so fucked when Trexia didn't show up for like the first hour of that session because about 30 minutes into the session I realized that this session had to start. There was no way to start the session except for with that character and an NPC because it literally contextualizes the whole session, not just for the rest of the players, but or not just
mhm.
for like me, but for the rest of the players. It like gives everything a thing to jump off from and like
Yeah.
is an understanding to work from that. I
Yeah.
literally like I was struggling so much.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I think that game still went, that session still went well. That
Yeah,
being said,
but it
I feel like
also
the Bunky Q really got along with Alfie's Light, which
yeah
helped.
yeah it also went like an hour or two late
It did. But
because
we were
of
also like, if you end it now, we'll kill you.
yeah yeah um
I think it was like an hour and a half,
yeah
maybe.
it was like really late, um uh and it was because of a late start, like, or not even late start, but like I that thing didn't
I
happen.
understand. I've had to try and stall for certain players to show up because I'm like, I
Yeah
kind of need them to
yeah
be here.
yeah. But
Fuck.
I think that my like one of my flaws is that I think that that is a me problem of like I if I need a player to be there, or if a like because as a DM you don't want to blame the players. It's not really the player's fault if
No.
someone, even if they show up and they're just like not. engaged, if something's going on in their life and they're still showing up, that's
Well, and
good enough.
ultimately, this is a product that they're paying for at the
Yeah.
end of the day. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
It's
it's a little different. Um,
the game lies, the quality of the game lies at the intersection of like the DM and the players like collaboration.
yeah,
And sometimes a player missing or whatever, or being low energy,
it
or a
happens.
DM not feeding themselves, having as good mental
I've
health.
canceled a session before because I was like, I had really specific plans for this session.
Mhm.
I'm not doing well, and
Mhm.
I rather wait and do and feel satisfied with what I ran and have you guys have a good time than fuck up something that I was excited for and end up looking back on it and being like,
Yeah.
I didn't get that done. However, I don't have a bunch of games running in the same setting, so
Yeah.
I have a little bit more freedom to be like, you know what, I'm not gonna run this. I don't feel good. I'm not gonna be able to carry the energy and the tone that I wanted to carry into this session. And I feel like the specific things planned within the session require me to carry that tone, and I can't do
Yeah.
it. So I rather just not and give you something of better quality at a later point.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's a big thing for me. Um, um, yeah, I would start. There's like 10 tangents I could start, but I know you have to go soon.
In like 20-30 minutes. But yeah, it is what I do. Not to Here's the thing. I'm gonna go back to critters, and then I'll try to get back
I
to.
did have one thing that I was going
Oh,
to
go
say
for it. Go for it first.
because I was looking at your TikTok, which is really funny. It was really funny to read through because you're right, they do get very upset. Um, uh, and like I didn't watch the TikTok because we're talking, so I was just kind
Mhm.
of like just skimming through those comments. You're right, Critical Role fans are a little feral. That could be said a lot about a lot of different like fan groups of a lot of different things. You know what the problem is, Jesse? You want to know what the real problem is? And I'm not going to do anything, right? But I used to have a problem with getting into fights with people on the internet. It's why I don't allow myself like to engage on Twitter. I follow a bunch of artists and like people who write so I can
Mhm.
like keep up to date on their work. That's it. Because I will get into fights with people on the internet. I will get into a lot of fights with people on the internet and I will be mean about it. I'm not being I it's not a pretty sight. And I will fight on the behalf of other people on it's not just an internet thing. I will fight people on the behalf of my friends. And so some of those comments I was like, I'm gonna destroy you. And then I was like, no, it's fine. Calm down, Tucker. And as I was reading that, I was like, oh no, this is igniting an old flame within me. The Tucker who takes immense joy in like arguing. Because I argue for fun. uh,
Here's
so
the
that
thing.
that was something I was experiencing as we were talking.
Here's the thing. Most of those motherfuckers in those comments are straight up wrong about whatever they're saying. They have poor argumentation, or didn't listen to what I said or whatever, not addressing whatever.
But
Um,
that's part of why my brain was like, do it, get involved. You want to know why? You know why, Jesse? Sometimes I feel bad for Brandon. Sometimes I feel like really bad for Brandon because the problem is I'm good at arguing. I'm really good at
well, me
arguing, and it
too.
makes it hard for people to argue with me. And it's not because I'm always right. It's just because I'm good at articulating my point about a situation. And some people just don't like they could be correct about a situation. They just are used to having to prove themselves in that or like having to articulate an idea like that, you know what I mean? And so they have a hard time. Like sometimes I'm wrong and they're correct, but I'm really, really good at arguing my point. And then later I'll come back to a situation and be like, hey, look, I may have been the one who was like way better at like explaining what they needed to explain. And usually it's not one side being completely wrong. But then I'll go, but I do realize that there was a few things that you probably had a point on. And then I'll be able to articulate their point for them better than they were able to
Mm.
articulate their point for them. And I'm really, really good at arguing. my brain knows what it's doing. It thrives. My dad used to say that I should be a lawyer. Um, disgusting. But I'm really good at that. So there was a like that's the thing in my brain that goes, I know I could destroy you. I could destroy you. When I see these people in the comments, I'm like, just wait till I watch this TikTok and I know what's actually being said.
Mm.
And I don't even know anything about Critical Role. But there was just like several comments that I was looking through that I was like, I don't even know what's being talked about, and that's a bad argument, and I don't know what's being talked about.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Um,
also have like a lot of thoughts and arguments in the way that people argue. And if you use your worst point, you've lost the argument. If you don't even bring it up, you know, don't even bring up the little thing. Use your best point and only use that. You're gonna fucking muddy the waters.
so all these fucking people. Um, I had I had a comment that came in like yesterday on like another video. I made three videos about Critical Role. Two of them were responses to the first. Um, I responded to one comment that was negative. It wasn't even
I
that
saw
negative.
that.
Yeah.
But it was
Um,
like it was mean spirit. It wasn't really
yeah.
an argument so much as it was because I don't think it's wrong for somebody to argue with you about Critical Role. I think it's the way that these people are arguing with
Oh
you about
yeah,
Critical Role.
for sure.
There was one comment that I saw that disagreed with you, but wasn't outright like, fuck you, you're stupid and wrong.
One.
One. I
Right.
saw
And I've
one.
I've I've seen the one or two or whatever,
And
how
they were
many.
just simply explaining that
Yeah.
like it seems like their players enjoy that and they
Oh yeah,
enjoy
yeah. But that's
that,
the
but
I
they weren't being an
I
asshole
said
about
that.
it.
I said that in the video. I was
Did
like,
you?
listen, Critical Role doesn't need to be anything else. I understand what it is, but it still has this problem.
Yeah. I hate when that happens when I explain that like if you enjoy that's fine.
Yeah.
Enjoy that. This
Yeah.
is my personal take on the
And people
situation.
acted like I killed Matt Mercer. And so here's the thing, though. So the fucking person on the last video was so measured, was so like, let me, because I realized in the first video I wasn't trying to be the most articulate, because the way I record TikToks is I have an idea, I have a thought, and then I record little bits at a time. I don't edit. I just here's a phrase. I think about what I'm going to say. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. I go to the next phrase and I go through it and I'll watch it back. Did I say it well enough? Sure. I didn't go back into any of the old Critical Role videos and research to be like, let's use exact examples. I was like, let's just try to communicate this thing. Here's a general feeling that I have, and people freaked out. And so in the last video I made, I was like, okay, here is what I'm trying to say more clearly. And I'm saying it in a way that is going to get less views, is going to be less inflammatory.
Mhm.
And to so people, if they do see it, they engage. And this fucking person comments, this person's just clowning on Critical Roles to get clicks, but I'll engage. Four comments in a shitty argument of like them doing their thing. And the amount of fucking self-control I've had to not engage with it, because I don't care about views. And I'm like, the goal of the TikTok is always, obviously, there's been no denying that this TikTok is trying to get players into my games. That is the only reason I've ever been on TikTok. But when I do make TikToks, I'm genuinely trying to be helpful. I'm trying for the most part to be helpful. And there was a period of time on TikTok where I I was like having a bad time and making things that I wouldn't make now. Like if this was happening, this video was happening in a place where I still had seats to fill that I was worried about filling, I might be a lot worse about this. I'm being so fucking chill. But so one of the things I said in that video though is like, listen, in the last like year and a half, I've run at the time like 370 something professional games. And that's more than Critical Role has put out in their 8-year run of their main campaigns, right? To signify that, hey, this is my whole life. My whole life is thinking about D&D,
Mhm.
is playing D&D, is making mistakes in D&D. I think it's fair that I add something to this conversation. I think I have a perspective that is valuable because I do this more than most people. And I am a pretty good GM. I think I have a uh um I put more thought not into like the world itself as like a detailed thing because there are people who are better at making detailed worlds,
Yeah.
but a lot of my world and a lot of the structure, it has a structure for meaning and for theme and storytelling to emerge from that meaning, and it's very very big picture. Um, so all this to say, I think I am a pretty good GM. I think in some senses I'm better than Matt Mercer. In some senses, Matt Mercer's better than me, right? Like Matt is better at holding tension and doing characters and voices. But as someone who is in a storytelling medium, Matt fails to use the medium appropriately to tell stories. He is playing a game. And I think actual play media should be better. I think we are making mistakes by treating these as games and putting them out for people to see. Nobody is showing up to watch a game be played. They're showing up for stories and characters, and that should be the lens through which you view actual play media.
I
I
think
think
that there's
it's
something to be said about the types of people who is so and I kind of experienced this as it was happening because I was getting into D&D um when like Critical Role had been out for a while, but like I watched like a few different people play D&D. My first real introduction to D&D was through Rooster Teeth, for those of you who are familiar. And they used to have like a game that is played. Um, and so something that happens with all of these, right? Um, it's like some people like engage in Critical Role and they engage in Dungeons and Dragons and like not just Critical Role, but any like podcast, YouTube series, whatever the fuck that follows people playing D&D, um, is um, there is an aspect of like there are aspects of it that they enjoy that is gameplay, but it's more about the personality of the like it's about the parasocial relationship a little bit. You know what I mean? These people are like minor level YouTube celebrities, and people get attracted to that kind of thing in the same way that they do regular celebrities. Um, I know this because I was once this when I was like 14, 15, you know. Um, and while it's something that's common in teenagers, it's definitely something that's found in adults as well. Where like there is a really big attachment to personalities. I probably wouldn't have watched at like I had been interested in the idea of D&D for a while, but I wouldn't have gone out of my way to watch that like them play D&D if I didn't know who they were. You know, now a lot of people who watch Critical Role do play D&D. However, a lot of them also like, I mean, it really depends person to person. Um, and it's also one of those things where like the way that people engage with D&D is so different, I guess, across the board. And this is also another reason that I wish people would read the fucking DM description. Just
blood
read
pressure is going to
it.
rise. Well, I
um,
think to
because it's one of
edit,
those things where like some people do they're there to play a game and they're there to be silly and they're there to make dumb decisions, which I would argue works considerably better in a home game situation and does not really translate well to paid games. Um, because you just don't know the type of people you're going to end up playing with, and some people do not mesh like that. what is funny and what is fun to you is not going to be the same to the next person. But it's like I agree. I like D&D better as a storytelling um mechanism than I do as like a game to play. However, I do understand that some people enjoy it in that way, and that's fine. Enjoy it in that way. But when I make the decision to, or like somebody makes the decision to, like criticize a story, the aspect that you clearly don't care about that much. I mean, like, yes, you enjoy it, you're taking it in, but like, how do I want to put this? There's like a point that I'm coming to, but my brain is like,
I
how do
think
I?
I see it.
It's like the way sometimes, right? I am an analytical person, and when I watch anything, I'm immediately like pulling it apart. However,
Yeah.
there are some things that I enjoy just because I fucking enjoy them. I showed you Train to Busan. I just fucking enjoy it. I just think it's a fun zombie movie and it makes me cry a little. And like it's like I like to watch the big man punch someone. I enjoy Interview with a Vampire because it's good. No, because I would get to watch Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt engage in homoerotic vampire like bullshit. That's why, and they dress in their funny outfits and they talk really dramatic and it's super like goth and it's just like it's ridiculous. That's why I enjoy it. And if somebody decided to criticize it based off of the merits of the story, that's fine because that's not the part I give a fuck about.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
They're going about it in a very different way than I it doesn't matter. You can enjoy things just to enjoy things. If you enjoy Critical Role, enjoy Critical Role.
We have to
People are
understand
still
what it
allowed
is.
to have like feelings about it and be
Yeah.
like,
Here's what I think though, is that Critical Role, this is so a couple people okay, I'm going to say a couple things. One, so I've been working with Trixia on a setting, and Trixia told me that I have audacity, like in a good way. I think that's true. I do think highly of myself, but it is not
you have like a level of gay audacity is the thing. What you don't realize. It's called gay audacity for
gay
the
audacity.
socially gay thing is really kicking in here. And you walk through the world like you're a homosexual.
That is actually that's actually I like that compliment a lot. Because that makes me because I as someone who is technically straight but like culturally gay is what I say about myself. That is like a validating compliment. Anyways, so audacity and I think highly of myself. I don't think it's unwarranted because I am extremely critical of myself. I'm extremely critical of myself. I had a bunch of criticisms of myself. Every single game, I go, was this the best game ever? No. How did I fuck up? Where did I fail the players? That's what my brain goes to every session. Not in like such a like dramatic way, but every single game. I've done that professionally 300 by actually by next Tuesday, it will be 400 times in the last year. Um, so I think highly of my games. I think highly of my abilities as a GM. And of course, this is also a thing of like every game is different. Everyone's needs are different. Everyone enjoys a different thing. So there is no GM who is necessarily better than
It's subjective.
yeah. There is a degree to which some things are subjective. Um, anyways, so some people in the comments were like, the ego on you, which I don't think I came across very egotistical at all in that video.
I'll
What I'm
watch it and
about
let
to
you know.
what I'm about to say is egotistical.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I had a cast as good as Matt's, I think I would have a show that was, and actually, let's say two things. If I had a cast as good as Matt's and a as much time as Matt did to plan, I would have a more compelling actual play show because of how I view the game and
Mm-hmm.
view the story. Because and again, Matt's phenomenal. Matt is phenomenal. I don't think me and him are comparable because we do different things. I think my whole point with this is that Critical Role doesn't really realize what it has. And a
Mhm.
lot of people, and again, it doesn't need to change because shit ton of people love it because Critical Role is also better than 99.9% of people's games. It is more entertaining. The stuff that comes out of it is better than like 99.9% of games because the cast is phenomenal and Matt is phenomenal. It's not getting mixed up here. Um, but it doesn't know what it has. It is a game that happens to have a story involved. And the mechanics of that game and the focus on playing that game over story as a piece of media uh, uh, um, brings it down. There are tons of people
Um,
who get bored of Critical Role, which again, it doesn't need to appeal to everyone. But I think there is a reason that that is happening. I think there's a reason that there is a section of the community that goes, I find it really hard to keep up with. And that happens, to be fair, with, I've heard that about a lot of different TTRPG shows. I don't think the industry knows what it has. And that's the thing that in my heart, I genuinely am like, I know what it is. I think I know what it is. I think I know how to achieve that. I'm designing a system to better achieve that than
mhm.
5e that has the elements of 5e, like the principles, not even like the design elements, but like the things that those design elements achieve for storytelling. I'm designing a system that I think achieves it better. And that's the other thing. The last thing I'll say about those comments is that the problem is, and the reason I mentioned people saying that this game is better than most other people's games, is because it works. Critical Role works. I still sit down every Thursday night or Friday morning or whenever I get a chance, and I keep up to date more than most people in the critical community. I would say, like not more than most. There's a significant portion of people. There's like probably like 100,000 people at least who like keep up week to week with Critical Role, but the number dwindles over time. But like I keep up with it. Um, what was I going? I got distracted on the
We
logistics of people.
fucking put the critical. I don't know.
The comments.
Oh yeah.
It works. It works really well. It really, really works really well. It works as good as it can with the limitations of this system, but the system is limited, and they're Matt as a DM is more concerned with the system than he is with the story, and as a piece of media, it holds it back. But again, it's better than most people's games. Most people's games do not reach the heights of Critical Role. So why would anyone think to be like someone being like, this doesn't work, and people are like, it works, it does work. It's like it could work better though, couldn't it? That's kind of like my whole point with like the what I was trying to get to is like this could be better, and critters are severely uninterested in hearing that because it does work to begin with. Like, why fix something that isn't broken? Um,
Mhm.
so that's the end of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think ultimately it does come down to people also just being very defensive of the things that they
Yeah.
enjoy.
Well,
To some
parasocial
degree, like
relationships. Yeah.
yeah, I do understand it. You know, uh, I get it. However, I'm as somebody who like, I mean, before I was doing this, I was going to school for like my just media studies. That's all I did. That's all I ever fucking do. um
My whole
uh
life.
it is. And like it was what I was good at. I can watch anything. I was watching there used to be this fucking MMA boxing reality TV show back in the day.
I
Uh
think I know the one you're talking about. I can't remember the name, but
my
I see the
parents used to
vibes.
love it, and my roommate was watching it as I was bleaching his hair the other night. And I was like, I think this is really interesting. This like beef between these two guys running these two gyms because like, and I just start going into it, and I was like, I know it's a reality TV show, but they do frame it in a way for you to consume characters. And I started going
Mhm.
into who I know who their audience is, not just because it's a boxing show, but because of the way that they frame these characters. They're real people, but they're cutting it to make
Yeah,
characters. That's how reality
yeah,
TV shows work. And so, and I was like talking to him about all these intricacies about like the way that they frame the characters within the show and what assumptions that I can immediately make about it. Right? This is all I fucking do. And I can sit for 3 hours and talk about, and it's not just about the story, but I can talk. I'm really good at kind of like my biggest thing is when I watch a movie, especially when my favorite movies are not necessarily movies that I think are perfect and that I love so much. I couldn't give you one of my favorite movies that I think is perfect and that I love so much. More often than not, it is a movie that I think is deeply flawed, but has really interesting like things to say. And I'll usually have an opinion of like, so this is what I would have done to depict this to the audience in a more effective way. This is what I would have decided to do. A really big thing about the new iteration of West Side Story, I could talk about that for hours because I have a lot of thoughts about what I would have done differently. So that's what I was going to school for before this. Um, uh, and so like I spend a lot of time thinking about media and thinking about the storytelling aspects of it, but also the social aspects of media and the way that we consume it, right? Um, I had a point to this, but no. So I have a very good understanding, and even me being having the analytical mind, there are still things that I just enjoy for the sake of enjoying them. However, it also puts me in a really good position to not be overly upset when somebody doesn't like something I really like. That's okay. They don't have to. Some things I just enjoy to enjoy, and there's always going to be a fault to be found within it. It's all right. As long as the argument is made in good faith, and you can always tell, then it doesn't really matter. It's okay. That's my message to everybody, every little critical role person in the audience. Anybody in general as a piece of media that they get really upset about when somebody doesn't like. It's all right. You're still allowed to like them. If they're being an asshole about it, ignore them. But if they're making a good faith argument, it's okay.
yeah.
It's all right.
These fucking critters. I hate them. I hope we,
It was
Brandon.
a pretty visceral response.
Yeah, I hope Brandon clips this episode up good and gives us the most raunchy video to post, and people come in the podcast and are like, "Fuck you," and like,
Oh, Brandon is look,
be a long time away, of course, but
and no, but he would definitely look. He would not to call him out right here, right now. He would absolutely like look at this and be like, I'm going to post the absolute worst parts of this for engagement because that's how he
that's
works.
yeah, that's the
He'd be like,
thing
yeah, fuck it.
that I like won't do
Mm-hmm.
is I don't care necessarily about engagement because I want to cultivate an audience that is like not just effective for games, but also like effective to engage with, like who fundamentally I don't want like hate follows. Like I had someone leave a hate comment and follow me, and I was like, I that was the last video I made that I was like, don't do that. That's fucking weird, dude. Like, fuck
That
off.
being said, it is even quietly will attract people who agree. That being said,
Yeah,
it's not something I've ever been fought. That me and Brandon have had conversations about this, where he's like, "I'd sell out," and
I
and
won't do
I'm
it.
like, "No,
Yeah.
I would not sell out." And I don't like I don't have any opinions or feelings about him being like that. I think it's funny, if anything.
Mm.
Um, because like I, as long as nobody's being like actually harmed. For example, there's like this person that always shows up on my TikTok lives. They make like ASMR, but it's like I got like stuck in a rabbit hole because there's such a like weird human. And so I started going through his page. He's like used to make music. I don't know what country he's from. He doesn't speak English. He's very popular. Like he gets a lot of views on his streams. He used to make music. And he posted like one really crappy like humor video where it's like I don't know if you know who like Lele Pons is, but like where it's just like dumb humor. It's like slapstick. It's like just making stupid faces and stupid noises. And it got so much engagement that he just started rolling with it, right? And now he makes ASMR videos like that. And I was like, in my head, I was like being so genuine. I looked at Brandon while I was talking about this. I was like, is he happy? And I want to know very genuine. I'm not being facetious. I want to know so genuinely, are you happy? Is there a joy like do you feel good about this? And it's because it's not, I don't look down on him. If this makes him enough money to live comfortably and to like in my head, I'm like, I hope he has hobbies. Like I hope, and I'm not being facetious. I hope that this job doing this demeaning thing has given him enough money that he can meaningfully engage with the things he is passionate about outside of it. I hope he has that. And I hope this has given him that. And if it has, then I wish him all the happiness and that he continues to get as many views as he's getting for this dumbass bullshit if it brings him such genuine joy and allows him to engage with the things he cares about. That's my big thing, you know? Um, Now that opinion changes the minute that there is like a demographic being harmed by content,
Mm.
you know? But if like he just makes like ASMR videos where he makes stupid sounds and stupid faces, and that gets like tons of engagement, even though it's probably the cringiest thing I've ever seen. Like it's painful to watch. I'm telling you, it's really bad. It hurts me physically, and it's embarrassing. You're like embarrassed when you're watching it. But I really do hope it brings him joy, and that's my thing about selling out. It's like if it doesn't hurt anybody, if you're not profiting off of vulnerable people, you know, or like putting hateful shit out into the world, and it makes you money to go do what you want to do in life, yeah, get that bag, you know, live it up. However, that will not ever be me.
I never fucking sell out. Never do it. Won't even engage on comments on my own videos to boost engagement. I don't give a fuck. Won't fucking do it. You'll never catch me selling out. If you catch me selling out, I've been replaced by a clone.
Or it's
Folks,
our editor.
or it's our brand. Folks, this has been the Story of the Apprentice podcast. We'll be back in our time, like 3.5, 4 hours. In your time, maybe a couple of days, even though it's been 2 weeks since the last one.
We'll try and pump it out.
Yeah, we're gonna pump them out. I have been Jesse T. William, and with me today has been
Tunk in my jimmies, and it means exactly what you think it means.